Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Alex.
Hey, Alex, how's it going today?
It's going wonderful. We get to do another rankings episode. So this time with our wide receivers. I'm excited, Jeff. I'm excited.
Let's go. Let's continue this fantasy discussion. We get to break down another position. As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please subscribe to us on the socials. We are on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Threads with the handle at N2EFantasy. Alex, what position do we have for our wonderful
Wide
audience today?
receivers. Wide receivers. And I will just point out, Jeff, it's not Twitter anymore. It's just called X. It's just X.
You got to go to twitter.com still. So the logo is just an X.
Let's just call it Twitter X. I think that's the best compromise. Just add X
Well,
to the end of Twitter.
so interestingly enough, on the way home today, I was thinking, like, what if Threads and Twitter combined? I think it would just be ThreadX. Threx. All right. So we are going to rotate back and forth our wide receivers. And we're going to do our top 24 because wide receivers is a much larger position than quarterback and tight end from the last 2 weeks. Alex, I will let you kick off. Who is your 24th wide receiver?
There's a lot of really good wide receivers that we probably both left off this list because it's a very deep year, but we've got to make choices. We've got to make those tough calls. So my number 24 this year is DJ Moore out of Chicago. I think obviously he has the potential to outscore this if Justin Fields turns the corner. I think though that number 24, which would be essentially the end of the wide receiver 2 group, I think is probably fair for him. And I think he's pretty close to some of the other guys at this spot too, as well as some of the guys that are off this list. Jeff, what do you think of DJ Moore here, and who do you have at 24?
So DJ Moore is going to be an interesting case this year. We're going to see what he does with Justin Fields. I have him a little bit higher than this, so I will give you my breakdown of DJ Moore a little bit later. But my 24 is Brandon Ayuk for the San Francisco 49ers. And I believe that he has great chemistry with Brock Purdy, who we just found out is cleared to start the camp season and should be good to go for the regular season.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Are
With
you
just having Ayuk
kidding me?
at number 24? Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of my fantasy football team names. Are you kidding me? Because I had Brandon Ayuk. Because it's clever to
Are you one
use.
of those people that change your team name every year?
Yes, Jeff. I'm a normal human being, and I like to get creative, and I like to use my players' names as part of a pun or a funny team name. I like to mix it up when I can. So I have Ayuk, like you have DJ Moore a little bit higher on your list. I have Ayuk a little bit higher on my list. So I will break that down when I get to him. But it's not a terrible spot. I'm just glad that you have him in your top 24.
I do. Ayuk.
Yep. So number 23, I know people may want to shoot me for this one, but I have Devonta Smith with Philly at number 23. Some people may have him higher. I totally understand, but he's the second wide receiver on his team and he's got to split some catches with not only AJ Brown but also with the tight end Goddard there and now potentially Swift. So I think that he's still good enough for the top 24, and you can even make a case that he could still have a good year and still outperform this pretty easily. But that's where I have him. Jeff, what do you think of Devonta Smith there, and who do you have here at number 23?
So Devonta Smith, what I think of the position that you have him in is I think you are dead on because I also have him at 23. And I know people are going to be a little upset about this because he did finish wide receiver 10 last year, but that's with like Cup out. Chase missed a bunch of time. Keenan Allen missed a bunch of time. So Ridley didn't play. There was a lot of factors that got him into the top 10. but 23, still a startable wide receiver, just probably not a wide receiver that I'm going to get because I'm going to assume that he's higher on other people's lists and ADP, and I'm okay not getting Devonta Smith.
Yeah, same here. He might be higher on full PPR rankings for some people. I have mine sorted for half point PPR because I feel like it's the best compromise between the two as far as overall rankings. So I do like him there, and obviously he can outperform 23. But Jeff, I can't believe that we already have a guy in the same spot. That's pretty impressive.
Yes, we do, and he is currently his ADP currently is wide receiver 13. So neither one of us are going to end up with very many shares of any of Devonta Smith.
Yeah. But hopefully, someone that I might be able to get in my leagues, assuming people don't use this information against me, is my number 22 wide receiver, which is Christian Kirk. Yes, I still have Christian Kirk in my top 24, even though Calvin Ridley came to town. So I do see the numbers dropping a little bit for him because of Calvin Ridley, but I still have him getting 88 catches for 1,100 yards. So I'm pretty ecstatic about him still. And if he goes underrated because people overcorrect too much and undersell him, then I'm probably going to be getting several shares of him this year. Jeff, how do you feel about this spot for Christian Kirk? And who do you have at number 22?
So I think you're going to end up with a lot of shares of Christian Kirk because his current ADP for half point PPR is 31. So I do believe you're going to get a ton of shares of him. For me, he's my number 38 wide receiver, and I have him going 76 catches, 976 yards. So just slightly lower than you. I don't believe he is the one on this team anymore, and I think that's a big change for him. He's going to take more of the Zay Jones role in this offense. So this is kind of where we are going to be going with that position, I think, with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, on to the real number 22. The real number 22 is Marquise Brown, who is the number one wide receiver in Arizona currently. Thoughts?
Let's see. Where do I have Marquise Brown at? I have him at my wide receiver 34. So I'm not super high on him. However, let me see what I have for his stats. I have 920 yards on 80 catches and 6 touchdowns. So I think he can probably be a wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside. So I don't fault you for having him in your top 24, especially if he's going to be the number one wide receiver option for the Cardinals this year. I know you're higher than me on Kyler Murray, so that totally checks out where you have him. I will say that for Christian Kirk, I don't think that he is taking the Zay Jones spot. I think that Calvin Ridley is. And I think that they're going to be 1A, 1B situations. I don't think either one of them is going to be the dominant wide receiver. I just think that they're going to be two different style wide receivers. So I think that both these guys make sense to be in someone's top 24. Which one's going to be better is going to be interesting, and that may be one of our side wagers this year, which will be pretty interesting to see how that shakes out. But I won't
For
be competing with you for him because he's way down on my list. But Jeff, where's his ADP? Where's Marquise Brown's ADP
Marquise
going right
Brown's
now?
ADP is currently 33
So they're
for
about in the
wide
same
receivers.
spot.
Yeah, they are. We are very close on that area. All right.
So
Who do you
that's
have at 21, sir?
yeah, that's two guys out there for you that might be sleepers for your team. So keep an eye on those two players. At number 21, I have Brandon Ayuk here. So a little bit higher than you. I really like his upside this year, especially with Brock Purdy being healthy and potentially playing the entire season. He really had that connection with him. I have him going 80 catches for 1,150 yards and 8 touchdowns. I think he could outperform that. It just depends how much McCaffrey takes away in the passing game and if Debo comes back strong this year, as well as where Kittle's at. Those are four really good players, really good receiving options. But I think Brandon Ayuk's yards after the catch is very impressive. So I'm really high on him this year, and I like him as a high upside wide receiver too. Jeff, what do you think about him here? Well, obviously it's pretty close to where you had, and who do you have at 21?
I have your number 24 at 21, so I think we swapped those. I have DJ Moore here. I have his projections a little bit lower than this spot, but I he's been so consistent. He runs the football. He's got to have better quarterback play this year, more consistent quarterback play at the very least. Getting chemistry with one person versus three or four people that he had to get chemistry with last year. Yeah, I think Ayuk, I think you're a touch high on his stats. We'll see. I have him at 74, 964, and 7. And I have DJ Moore at 82, 1009, and 6.
Well, okay, so I think this is interesting. So first I'll touch. I actually have DJ Moore at 82, 1,000 even, and 9 touchdowns. So that's pretty close to what you have for him as well. But
You
I just
bumped
think
up
it's
his
interesting,
touchdowns a
Jeff.
bunch.
There's there's two things that I find interesting, and one is that you're a very stats driven guy, so much so that you're very meticulous about your stats. You go back 3+ years sometimes to really look at trends, and you're very meticulous about it. But now it sounds like you're going for your feelings, Jeff. You're searching your feelings, and you're like, I think he's better than what the stats show, which I don't blame you for, man. I think that he has very high upside. Uh, However, you've been pretty low on Justin Fields. So I don't know how you reconcile the two things. One, you really believe in the player DJ Moore, but you don't believe in his quarterback. So how do you reconcile him being at 21 on your list?
I'm hedging bets that the possibility that DJ Moore could be what Stephon Diggs was to Allen, what AJ Brown was to Jalen Hurts. I'm hedging my bets like a little bit on that. So I think that possibility out there had to be factored into my decision, and that's hence a little bit of a bump up. His current ADP is 22, so we're both in the ballpark of his 22 ADP. So we may get him.
Yep. He's a little bit better of a bargain for you at that ADP, but I really like his potential upside. And if Justin Fields turns the corner, then I think he's going to be a really good addition for any of you guys out there. At number 20, I have another familiar name for folks, and that is T. Higgins. I think he is a very good wide receiver too in both real football and in fantasy. I hesitate to put him in the wide receiver one area, which is where people keep trying to put him. And I think Irv Smith being the tight end for them now is going to take a little bit away from Higgins' overall stats, as well as if Boyd is in basically a contract year to try to earn his final contract and try to have a significant role carved out, that's going to come from Higgins, not so much from Chase. So, Jeff, how do you feel about T. Higgins at 20, and who do you have at this spot?
Woo! So I think you're a little low on T. Higgins, which I never thought I would say. Just given your Bengals love and my Higgins my Chase love and Higgins kind of having to take a back seat, but I think you're a little bit low on him. ADP for T Higgins is 12th, by the way. So
Yeah, I won't.
you're not gonna sniff him there. My number 20 is a perennial favorite for the top 15, top 16 wide receivers. And I have no doubt that this will be the same, even though his quarterback play has decreased. And at number 20, I have Mike Evans this year.
So I'll just go ahead and break out into my 19, which is also Mike Evans. So I have him one spot ahead of you, Jeff, and you love him. Like you like him a lot more than I do. However,
One spot.
however,
Uh,
Jeff likes to point out, and I can't believe you didn't break into this diatribe here, is every single season he's had 1,000 yards and probably I think about 10 touchdowns every single year. And I think he's done that with Jameson Winston. He's done that with Tom Brady. He's done he's done that with basically any quarterback they throw out there. So why would this year be any different, especially if they're playing in negative game scripts where they have to throw the ball to compete? So I see him clearing that mark. I think it makes sense for him to be at 19 or at 20. I think someone might devalue him just based off of how they feel Tampa Bay is going to be this year, and that will be a sneaky ad, just a savvy ad to just bring in a solid guy to your team. So I like him. I like him this year,
do you know what
even if
his
it doesn't
ADP
feel
is?
great. What's his ADP?
32. We're going to
Wide
get a
receiver 32
lot
or
of Mike Evans. Yes.
wow. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a you're getting a lot of value if you're getting him at wide receiver 32. That is insane.
For sure. And I have not looked at any ADP before tonight yet. So I'm not going to look at the running back ADP until we release our running back ratings next week. And the reason why I'm kind of doing this is to make sure that I'm not skewed by any ADP or anything like that. But this is like a prime case where if I know that my 20th player is Mike Evans, and I know most players aren't going to be looking around 30th wide receiver to get him, I'm going to drop him a few rounds, try to stock up on a few more players that I'm high on, and then come back to him and get him and scoop him just before other people start to look at him.
Yeah, you want to get the best value you can. And if you end up getting value picks all throughout the draft, that's how you get a league winner right there. So that makes total
Absolutely.
sense. Just make
My,
sure there's someone else that's not doing the same thing.
right. My number 19 is Amari Cooper. So I do believe he's going to be Watson's number one, and he should be able to continue his good year last year where he finished wide receiver 9. And there's still some really good wide receivers in front of him. So Amari Cooper is number 19 for me.
I don't know what's going on. I think the world's broken because I'm higher on a Jeff player than Jeff is. So I'm a little bit higher on Amari Cooper, so I'll talk about him when, when I get to him. But I don't fault you for where he's at. I think he's in the low end wide receiver one or the high end wide receiver two area. I think he's a solid guy. But with a full season of Deshaun Watson, I can definitely see him playing very well. So I can't
For
blame you
sure.
for that spot. All right. So at number 18 for me, I have the other Jacksonville wide receiver, Calvin Ridley. I do have him edging out in total points over Christian Kirk. However, they are the exact same points wise in full PPR. So I think Kirk catches more passes and Ridley gets more yards. They probably both get around the same amount of touchdowns. Maybe Ridley gets one more. But either one of these guys are going to be interesting fantasy targets this year. I think some people may value Ridley higher, so I probably won't be getting any shares of Ridley this year. But he's been out for a year. I'm hesitant to put him higher than this, although he does have the upside of being a potential wide receiver one in fantasy. Jeff, what do you make of Ridley here, and who do you have at 18?
So Ridley is a little bit low for my liking there. We'll get to him in a little bit, so I'll save my analysis and ADP for then. But at number 18, I have Tyler Lockett. And this is a guy that does not get drafted at all. I have him actually projected as my 11th wide receiver, but I know I'm going to be able to get him later in drafts just because no one ever wants Tyler Lockett. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's low for his value, but I agree. Every year he's one of these wide receivers that nobody seems to want to draft. It's like eating your broccoli and your vegetables, like you know it's good for you, but you just don't want to, and then it ends up being pretty good. Um, I think what he was in the top 10 last year as he finished. And I think he was pretty good the year before that. He has a pretty decent quarterback, and you can argue about Geno Smith's overall value and where Geno Smith is. I really like Geno Smith, so of course I'm higher on these wide receivers probably than you are, Jeff. So I am a few spots ahead of you on Lockett, and I'm just going purely based off of projections. So I have him a little higher up, and I'm more than willing to talk about him some more up there.
Look at
But
you.
I know. I have at number 17, I have one of our favorite wide receivers here, Terry McLaurin. I want to put him higher. I just can't because he's still in such a bad quarterback situation that I can't put him higher. Although his talent level, he should be in the top 12 wide receivers. I really like him. He also has Jahan Dotson, whatever. I can't remember his name.
That's him.
Washington, and I think that that's going to be a challenging situation. But I mean, I have him almost 1,200
Woo.
yards receiving. Jeff, who
Woo.
do you have at 17, and what do you think of McLaren at that spot?
So Scary Terry here, I have him at 87 grabs or 84 grabs, 1,102 yards, and 5 touchdowns. The 5 touchdowns hurt him a lot, and I have him actually at wide receiver 26. His ADP is wide receiver 21. I know that he's one of your guys in multiple leagues, but he's a guy that I'm probably going to stay away from this year. Don't like the quarterback position, don't like the head coaching position. He's kind of a stay away guy for me this year. But my number 17 is actually the guy that finished at 17 last year, and that's T. Higgins. So a little bit higher on T. Higgins than you are. With his ADP of 12, I'm still probably not going to get him at 17. So, and you're definitely not going to get him at 20 where you drafted him at.
Yeah, I'm not a super high on him. But Jeff, I'm trying to figure out did where did Scary Terry finish last year?
He finished wide receiver 14.
So wide receiver 14 last year with arguably worse quarterback situation than he has this year. Why would he drop all the way down to the to 26 for you? Why wouldn't he stay in your top 24? Especially since he's one of the most talented wide receivers out there.
So number one is Ron Rivera. Number two is I don't believe Sam Howell is better than Carson Wentz. I believe Carson Wentz is a gunslinger. I think Tyler Heineke could get McLaurin the ball much better than Howell will be able to. I do think Dotson, though, he's a guy that's on the rise and to watch out for in pretty much all leagues right now.
You're just gonna die on this hill for Wentz, aren't you?
Wentz is my boy.
Uh,
Prototypical quarterback.
Washington's very high on Howell, whether that's realistic or not. They like him. At least they say they like him, and they say he would have been one of the best quarterbacks if he came out the year before. So maybe that's true. Maybe that's not. They're going to have a lot of negative game scripts, especially within their own division. So I think they're going to have to throw. And I like Terry McLaurin for that reason, and I still have him 3 spots lower than where he finished last year. But I think you're too low on him, and I think talent eventually wins out. So I think he will finish in the teens. So we can bet on that.
We will see where Scary Terry lands. And hopefully you're right with McLaurin because I know you do have a few shares of him, and I know that you're going to be bidding on him in other leagues. So I hope that you're right for your sake, but this is a stay away from me year.
All right. Well, let's go for one of I feel slightly shocked that this guy ended up at this spot, but at number 16, I have DeAndre Hopkins with the Tennessee Titans finishing with about 85 grabs, 1,100 yards, and 9 touchdowns with the Titans. I'm honestly shocked that he ended up here. Jeff, is this a reasonable spot for him? And who do you have at 16?
It's a reasonable spot, but he fell just outside my top 25 or 24 when I was doing this. He's at 25, currently going wide receiver 19 and ADP. And my stats for him is 87, 10, 21, and 8. So in the same ballpark, but a little bit lower. We'll see what happens with him on a new team, but it was actually down to him and Ayuk for that last wide receiver spot. And I kind of liked what Ayuk and Purdy did last year.
Yeah, Yuke is younger, has a lot more going for him on a better, more competitive team. But
He's playing for a contract.
Hopkins is apparently the guy for this Tennessee team, and I can see them playing in some pretty tight games trying to win. So I mean, I could see these stats happening. But Jeff, who do you have here at 16?
Wait, Burks is in your top 15?
No,
Oh,
no,
me either. Me
Bert.
either. Me either.
Yeah,
Just trying to trip you up. My number 16 here is Chris Godwin. So I have both Tampa Bay wide receivers in the top 24. They typically perform in the top 24 together. Like last year, Evans was 16 and Godwin was 20. I do think they flip flop a little bit here because I think Godwin is going to be the safety blanket for Baker Mayfield. And I do think that he's going to catch a ton of balls across the middle of the field as they face a few negative game scripts, but that division should be pretty even Steven as well.
I have Godwin outside my top 24. I have him at my 29th wide receiver. I think he's a very good full PPR wide receiver. He's even a pretty solid wide receiver for half PPR. but I don't think he really moves the needle that much for standard scoring. If you guys are out there for that, I have him
Yeah.
around the same area as Deontay Johnson. They're pretty similar in my eyes, and I have him below some other wide receivers that are more prominent, like Debo Samuel and Pittman. Those guys are all in that area. I do have him above Trey Burks though, so just so you
Yeah.
know, I have him above him.
He's
I don't
currently
fault you
going
for
at 27.
Yeah, I don't fault you for putting him there. I just can't put him above Mike Evans. Mike Evans to me is the one that gets the touchdowns and the deep balls. But I mean, if you have one in there, it does make sense to have two in the top 24.
Right. And I think what's going to hurt them is I don't think Baker's going to throw as many deep balls. I think Godwin's going to gobble up a whole bunch of balls across the middle of the field.
It could be. I just think Baker likes to throw to his taller wide receivers. I think he
He
likes
didn't
to
get
throw
along with
downfield.
Odell.
Yeah, that was weird, but maybe Odell just annoyed him. I don't know.
I hear excuses.
I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. But at number 15, I have someone that you've already taken, and that's Tyler Lockett. I think it's about halfway between where he finished last year and where people feel like he's going with their ADP. So I think 15 is a good spot for him. I think he and DK Metcalf both get theirs this year, even though they brought in some young guys as well. I I really like them a lot, and I will probably end up getting a lot of Tyler Lockett shares this year, especially if people don't value him very much.
A lot
Jeff?
of Lockett. A lot of
Yep.
Lockett. So you are going to get a ton of Tyler Lockett because he is currently going. You ready for this ADP here? He's
Tell me it's
going
in the
ADP
30s.
28.
28. What people? Who are they drafting, Jeff? Who are they drafting?
They're drafting Mike Williams, Jerry Judy, Christian Watson, Drake London, DJ Moore, McLaurin, Ridley, Hopkins, Allen, Cooper, Samuel over him.
Some of those guys, yes. Some of those guys, no.
Right.
But
But I do agree with you that he should be in the top like 24 because he did finish 9, 13, 13, and you have him at 15. So a little bit of a downgrade, but also he's been consistent. Like, I don't understand why fantasy players do not like him. I know you had him in a league, and I know I had him in a league, and we tried to sell him. We couldn't. We ended up cutting him. And then all of a sudden, he performs again last year as almost a top 12 wide receiver, 13 to be exact. So he's a guy that no one wants to have, but he's a really good, solid wide receiver to have.
seems to be a Seattle specific thing because Doug Baldwin was the same thing when he was there.
All
But
right.
Jeff,
So going
who do
on.
you
So
have? Yep.
at 15, I have Garrett Wilson at 15, and I believe him and Aaron Rodgers will light the world on fire. It may take a month for them to fully get chemistry, especially in like a real game flow, game script. Because I do think in the preseason they're going to see some vanilla defenses. It may not be the same when they get out there the month of September, but I think October onward, he should hit the ground running and be a top 12 wide receiver from that point forward. But that little sputter in the beginning will prevent him from being a top 12 receiver this year. What are your thoughts on Garrett Wilson?
I, I I don't think you can say lights the world on fire and put him at wide receiver 15. And he's the new Devonte Adams. I don't know if you knew that. So he's got to be right next to where you have Devonte Adams, right?
I love I love how you like slide one thing out and you have to slide exactly the similar type thing right into that spot. It's like if you were replacing relationships. Oh, she's the new wife. It doesn't work like that. There's only one Devonta Adams. Devonta Adams is a Hall of Famer. I'm not sure Garrett Wilson's a Hall of Famer.
Well, Garrett Wilson is a more polished product coming out of college than Devonte Adams was. Devonte Adams had to really work at his game to come out to be the phenomenal player that he is. They both gonna have like Devonte Adams had Aaron Rodgers throw to him. Now Garrett Wilson's gonna have Rodgers throw to him. So everyone seems to think he could be the new Devonte Adams. I don't think he's gonna be a Devonte Adams. I think he's gonna be a different wide receiver together.
Right.
But I think to me he's better than 15th on my list. But I don't fault you for having him there. There's just a few guys that it seems like I'm just a little bit higher on you then, but that's not a problem. We have our own opinions, and at least you have them this high. I know you've been down on the Jets in general, but all is forgiven now that you have him in your top 15.
Good thing they didn't They didn't sign Hopkins.
Yeah, that would have been confusing for everyone.
Yes.
All right. So at number 14 is another guy that I have higher than you, and that is Amari Cooper. I think that he's a borderline wide receiver one, and I think he's clearly the number one option in Cleveland for Watson. So I really like him at this spot. I'm very curious what his ADP is going right now because it seems like another guy I might end up with more shares than some people out there. But Jeff, how do you feel about Amari Cooper at this spot, and who do you have at 14?
So Amari Cooper's ADP is 17 right now. So you're kind of in the ballpark. You may not get him depending on who's available from your board left over. But I do think a lot of folks are at least interested, if not really curious about Elijah Moore and what role that Elijah Moore has in Cleveland, especially with Deshaun Watson. But if we're going to go into my number 14, it is Deebo Samuel. And I don't believe Deebo appears on very many lists this year, but I'm pretty close on his ADP. What are your thoughts on Deebo?
He is outside my top 24. I think that he's going to be okay in the receiving department. I just don't think he's going to outperform Brandon Ayuk. I think that his rushing stats might be gone now that McCaffrey is in town. Obviously, that depends on McCaffrey's health. If McCaffrey, for whatever reason, misses a game or two, Debo's going to get some of those rushing stats. I think Debo will have a better receiving year than he did last year. So I have him in my top 30. I don't have him in my top 24. So that's pretty high for me.
Here's what I have for stats, though. You said his rushing yards would be down, and I have him only at 189 yards rushing with 2 rushing touchdowns. So I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, given the fact that he could do end arounds and they could have gadget plays for him. But I have him catching 82 balls for 1094 and 5 touchdowns. So that kind of puts him into that almost wide receiver one range.
Yeah, so I actually am very similar on the rushing stats. I have 125 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. I have 75 receptions for 900 yards and 6 touchdowns. So
Okay.
I do like him. He is my number 27 wide receiver, so I'm 12 spots off from you. I think he'll be a top wide receiver three for people or a low wide receiver two. I think 15. I'm hesitant to go that high just because last year was kind of a down year for him. And I think McCaffrey eats into a lot of his value. But
You know I hate
we will.
recency biased
Well, recently they added the best running back in the league when it comes to versatility and receptions. So,
ever.
I
Yep.
mean, that really impacts his role.
But he's currently going at ADP of wide receiver 16. So I don't believe you'll end up with any Debo Samuel shares.
No, I will not. Mm-mm.
This is a fun exercise when I start looking at ADPs when I haven't all year and I've done my rankings. I feel really good about my rankings, and then I look at ADP and they either make me feel really good about my ranking, like this Debo one, or they make me question everything, like Marquise Brown or Mike Evans or something like that.
Yeah, for those of
So,
you who are listening and not watching, Jeff has a pen in his hand, so I think he's writing down these players' names so he can make sure that he drafts them at a really good value. That's what I think.
oh,
Is that what you're doing?
I do have a pen in my hand, and I am jotting down all of ours, more for conversation pieces, but I will snipe you in a few leagues.
That's not cool, Jeff. What happens in the podcast stays in the podcast, Jeff.
That's true. That's true. All right. So, who is your number 13?
Well, no, for my number 13 wide receiver, this seems kind of fitting for me because he's someone who has snake bit me in the past, and that is one of your favorite wide receivers, Jeff, Keenan Allen out of the Chargers. I think that he will play more games this year than he did last year. I think he is a receptions hog for the Chargers, even with them adding another wide receiver there in the draft. I have him getting like 95 catches, which might even be on the low side if he plays a full season. I have him getting about 1,105 yards and 9 touchdowns for that Charger team. He could go above this. He could go below this. I think people might be lower on his ADP this year than where this spot is. But Jeff, I know he's a guy that you've liked for quite some time. How do you feel about him at 13? And who do you have at this spot?
We're going to get to him in a short period of time, but
Oh
you had him
my
for
gosh.
90 catches
95.
for 95 for 1100. I have him at 106 for 1135 and 8. So, but that was good enough to project him in the top 10. He's not in my top 10, but it projects him into the top 10. So I'm interested to hear some of the stats you have for wide receivers higher than him. So if we're going to go into my wide receiver 13, I have Calvin Ridley here. This is kind of where I think that Calvin Ridley's going to be. He is the alpha of this offense. He's the best route runner. They're already singing their praises about Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's entering a contract year. He's playing for that second contract. I know he's an old rookie. He's playing on the 5th-year option because of the suspension, but I do believe Ridley here picks up where he left off. He was wide receiver number 4 in 2020, and that's with Matt Ryan. And I think Trevor Lawrence might be the best quarterback that he's ever had a chance to play with. And I think that he has a chance to be a wide receiver 1 this year. And I do think that really does hurt Christian Kirk's value, especially with Ingram coming back. And they also have a full season at ETN this year. So I think that it'll be an interest target pie how Jacksonville breaks it up.
I don't feel comfortable with him being that high because he's missed a year and a half of football. I don't know what kind of shape he's in. I know that they're singing his praises. They kind of have to with what they've traded to acquire him, even when he couldn't play. So I know he has the upside for this spot, and that makes total sense. I am not ready to buy into it year one of him returning to the league. I do think, like you said, Lawrence is a better quarterback than Matt Ryan was at the stage that really was there. I don't know about the offensive system, if it was a better system than what the Falcons had, though, that also helped him. It is a wide open division in which they are most likely going to be the number ones. I think they may end up running the ball a lot more against the Colts and Texans if they have a big lead. So I'm hesitant to give those guys really huge stats, like borderline wide receiver 1 stats. However, if you're going on the upside for him, if you're going on how you feel about him as a player, then it makes sense to have him at the borderline wide receiver 1 spot. I just can't buy the upside yet. I have to restrain myself a little bit on my rankings.
So a couple things about Ridley. The first thing is ADP is 20, so you're closer to ADP than I am. And the Jaguars only gave up a 2023 5th-round pick and a 2024 conditional 4th-round pick to acquire him. So he's in the last year of his rookie deal. They gave up 2 picks. I know the 4th-rounder is a conditional pick that could become a 3rd-rounder if he gets certain incentives, or a 2nd-rounder if he signs an extension. So it's still not that much for a wide receiver this day and age, considering Devontae Adams got 2 first in the twilight of his career. So I just see this as they don't really need him. They don't really need him to talk him up because they didn't really give up that much for him. A 4th and a 5th is they're not going to really blink at that at the end of the day. So,
Uh,
but you're closer
little
in ADP.
little sports trivia for you, Jeff. Don't know if you know what the highest trade offer was for a top wide receiver in the NFL and who the player was. Do you know
Brandon
what
Cooks,
the
right?
biggest offer? No, it was actually Chad Ochocinco. So in his prime
What he
with the
fetch?
Bengals, I believe it was Washington offered 3 first-round picks for Chad Ochocinco, and the Bengals turned it down.
I think that was a stupid move by the Bengals. I
I
don't
don't
know
know if
any
he
wide receiver that's worth 3 first-round picks, like maybe Jerry Rice.
I mean, the Bengals at the time, like Chad Ochocinco was helping Carson Palmer like keep the Bengals afloat and like but potentially a playoff team every year. So without him,
They had
I don't know if
TJ
they're a playoff team.
Hushmanzada.
TJ, who's your daddy?
Hushmanzada.
He's a
Uh,
he's now in the broadcasting business now. He's doing commentary.
he
Ujmanzada.
is for sure. I hear him every once in a while on the radio, and yeah, I can hear that. But they had quite a team back then with Carson Palmer. I'm surprised they didn't do better. So who is your number 12?
My number 12 is a teammate of somebody already on this list, and that is DK Metcalf. He's always profiled as a top wide receiver, and I think that he and Lockett continue to be one of the best wide receiver duos in the league. And I really like him at the 12 spot. You can make a case for him being a little bit lower, of course. I think his explosiveness and his size will always have him with the potential to be a wide receiver one. Jeff, how do you feel about Metcalf here at 12? And who do you have at this spot?
So first, his ADP is 15, and I also have Metcalf at 12. So we are in complete agreement here. He's a great player. I love him. We're close to ADP. I mean, the thing that I love most about him is he is a burner, and he's a guy that could go up and get a ball. Like he might be the most complete wide receiver in football right now. He just doesn't have that consistent quarterback play. Like if he was playing with like a Mahomes or an Allen, like this would be incredible to watch.
I mean, even with like Kirk Cousins, if he played opposite of Justin Jefferson, can you imagine? I don't think a defense could cover them.
I
Huh.
don't know. I
But
don't
yeah,
know. Who do you have at 11?
so at 11, I have Garrett Wilson. I think he is a wide receiver one this year. I don't think that he is quite a Devontae Adams at this stage in their career. I think that he is potentially a better version of Devonta Smith, which is why I have him several spots ahead of him. And I think that he and Rodgers will, as you put it, light up the league a little bit. And I think that they can build from this year. Should they do well this year, I think I will have Garrett Wilson hired next season. Jeff, who do you have at 11? How do you feel about Garrett Wilson at this spot, too?
His ADP is 9, and I would feel really comfortable with him anywhere after 10, to be honest, even though I have him at 15. So I do feel good about that. I do have Keenan Allen in the 11 spot, and that's because he's just been so consistent. His ADP is 18, though, so it sounds like either one of us could get some shares of Keenan Allen this year. I love the chemistry that he has with Justin Herbert, and he actually was the number 4 wide receiver down the stretch last year, and I think we even ran it back further, and I think he was in the top 5 the last like 6 or 7 or 8 weeks of the season last year. But I'd have to go back and look to double check on that. He's just been so consistent. He's finished wide receiver 14, wide receiver 14, and then last year 42 because he missed a bunch of games. But he's always right up there, consistent guy that catches a lot of balls. Will be a lot more productive in full PPR versus half PPR or standard scoring. I look forward to him. And what do you think about Allen? And then we can jump into the top 10.
I mean, he's only 2 spots ahead of where I have him, so I'm totally comfortable with you having him there. I think 11 and 13 is basically a
The
similar
same.
spot on most people's draft boards, so it's probably around the same area, probably what the 2-3 turn there. So I think that checks out. I have at my number 10 spot. I think some people may get annoyed with this, but I have AJ Brown at number 10. I know he probably finished a little bit higher, but I am down a little bit down from the consensus on AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, just because I think that Goddard is healthier this year, and I think that they're going to try to run the ball more with the stable of running backs that they have assembled. I don't know if they're going to have as many passes to these top guys, even though they're phenomenal wide receivers. I think they come down a little bit on stats, but they're still very good. Jeff, what do you think about AJ Brown being 10? And who do you have at this spot?
You're slightly low on him, but I don't hate it. I do think he takes a little bit of a step back this year. I just think that that offense might take a little bit of a step back because they did lose their coordinator, and we'll see what that does to Hurts in basically his second full year starting. Kind of crazy to say that out loud, considering he got a 5-year contract extension after just 1 year. But my number 10 is Jalen Waddle. I love Waddle. He finished number 7 last year, and I do expect him and Tyreek to be the tandem that continues to keep going. Am I too high on Waddle, or are we going to about to hear him coming up on your ranking soon?
I actually have him next at number 9, so I like
Wow.
the spot. I like the 9-10 spot. Sorry, Eagles fans, I have the Miami Dolphins number 2 wide receiver over your top wide receiver there. But I think that he eats into a little bit more of Tyreek Hill's stats, so I think they even out a little bit more. Obviously, I think that they're two phenomenal wide receivers and they deserve to be in the top 10. They also are the primary targets for the Dolphins. I don't think that they have really a third option that's as prominent as what the Eagles have with Goddard there. So it makes sense that the top two guys get a little bit more of the target share. I totally buy into that, especially if Tua is healthy this season. I think that, as you've pointed out, you really like McDaniel's offense with Miami, and they seem to probably be the division winners there. I know that season hasn't played out yet. The Bills are always good, and the Jets are much improved with a veteran quarterback. So it's yet to be played out. But Jeff, I'm sure you like him being at 9 since you have him at 10. And who do you have here at your ninth guy?
Whew, my ninth guy is Amara St. Brown, and I am ready for him to light the world on fire. I have him at 113 grabs, 1,193 yards, and 6 touchdowns, adding a rushing touchdown and 90 yards rushing as well. He's just a guy that finished eighth last year. I don't think Jamison Williams is going to be the guy that takes over for him this year. And obviously Hawkinson's gone, so there's some serious opportunity this year for St. Brown, and we'll see if that turns into or that comes to fruition. But he did finish eighth last year, as I said, and I have him ninth this year.
Well, I have his teammate Denzel Mims going eighth overall. No, just kidding. I have Amon-Ra St. Brown at 8 this year. So I have him one spot ahead of you, but I really like him too. I really like that you had the Egyptian sun god setting the world on fire this year. So that really checks out. I agree. I think he's the number one option there. I think he's a better receiver than people still give him credit for today after the success he's already had. I think that Jameson Williams is more of a deep threat guy, and I think Amon Ra is more of the possession guy who also brings a little bit more yards after the catch than people think. So I agree that the 8 or 9 spot is great for him. I'm curious where his ADP is. I bet it's pretty close to 8 or 9 right now. So I don't know if you can get that much of a value off of him, but I think you can draft him and feel assured that he is going to perform for you.
Yeah, St. Brown's 10 right now, so he's right in the ballpark of where we are. So we might be able to get him. Obviously, it depends how the board falls, and I assume like around this area, there's going to be like 5 or 6 guys in a tier, and everyone's going to have them in a little bit different of order. Because my number 8 is St. Brown without the Saint. It's just AJ Brown. Here we go. I know you talked about him 2 picks ago. Basically, I decided to put him ahead of the Dolphins' second wide receiver, and I decided to put him ahead of St. Brown as well. AJ Brown finished wide receiver 5 last year, so this is a little bit of a step back. We will see what kind of happens here, but I have him grabbing 87 catches, 1261, and 11 touchdowns. His current ADP is wide receiver 7, and you can kind of see why I would grab AJ Brown there, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's only a couple ahead of where I have him, and you can make a case he could be potentially as high up as maybe 5, 6, or 7. So I completely understand that. I have at my number 7 spot. Again, anytime I mention a Dallas player, I have to throw up in my mouth just a little bit. But I have CD Lamb here at number 7. I don't think that he gets 1,400 yards like he did last year because he does have more target competition with Brandon Cooks coming to town, and hopefully Gallup also does better this year than last year, being another year more healthy. So I really like the addition of Brandon Cooks. So I think he does eat into CD Lamb a little bit. I think CD Lamb, however, will be more consistent throughout the season. I know he had early on, he was a little bit spotty, but I like him going into this year. Jeff, who do you have at number 7? And also, what do you think of CD Lamb at number 7?
Well, I think great things because Lamb is also my number 7, but I do have him going over 1,400 yards. I have him 1,423 on 109 grabs and 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, I have him getting more touchdowns this year because Dalton Schultz is gone. I don't know how much they trust Ferguson and a rookie tight end going into this season. So I think CeeDee Lamb makes up the difference with his touchdowns. So I have 10 touchdowns for him. I
Got it.
have 1,200 yards and I have 90 receptions. I do think Brandon Cooks eats into him, and I think Gallup as well.
Yeah, I think Cooks gets really close to 1,000 yards in this offense too. So I think that they both light it up on fire. And then I have Gallup coming in the third place with 708 yards receiving.
I think that's fair. All right. Well, that's three players we align perfectly on. So as far as ranking, so that's great. Let's see if we can keep it going. At number 6, I have Devontae Adams with the Las Vegas Raiders. I know as far as real football goes, he would be higher on the list. As far as fantasy goes, he has Jimmy Garoppolo throwing to him, so I'm not as confident with him this year. However, talent wise and sheer amount of volume that he's probably going to get this year, I still have him the number 6 fantasy wide receiver going into the season with about 102 grabs, 1,275 yards, and 9 touchdowns. I want to give him more. I just don't like the Raiders this year. Jeff, how do you feel about Adams here at 6, and who do you have?
I'm a little surprised that you did that, but we're in the ballpark. I have Diggs at number 6. His ADP is number 5. Lamb's is number 6. We didn't discuss that before. I feel really good about having Diggs in this spot right here. Diggs, I have at 117 grabs, 1457, and 10 touchdowns. So he's that next step up. The extra couple of touchdowns from Lamb, like the spot a lot for Stefan Diggs. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't hate it. I think the top 6 guys here, I think you can move around in different orders depending on preference. So I don't blame you at all for having Stefan Diggs here. I have Stefan Diggs actually a little bit higher than you, which I'm a little
Uh-oh.
surprised of. But at number 5, I have Jamar Chase. And I know a lot of you might be screaming that Chase should be maybe top 3. However, maybe it's just how I feel about Irv Smith's chances this year, but they have Chase, they have Higgins, they have Boyd, they have Irv Smith. I think you've got to even that target pie just a little bit. However, Jamar Chase is a phenomenal wide receiver. I completely understand if you have him higher. I just think his stats when it comes to fantasy seems a little bit streaky to me. He doesn't seem as consistent as some of the other top guys, so I wouldn't have him in my top 3. But that's just me, Jeff. How do you feel about Jamar Chase at 5, and where do you have, or who do you have at 5?
Ooh, you are low. You are not getting Jamar Chase. He is currently the number 2 wide receiver off the boards in ADP. Number 5, I have Devontae Adams. He's going to get a bump down this year, and that's just from the sheer fact of playing with Jimmy Garoppolo. He did finish though the last 3 years 1-3-2. So number 5 is not outside the realm. I don't really view Garoppolo a huge downgrade from Derek Carr, but I do have him at my number 5 spot right now. I think we're one spot off right now, and Adams' ADP might actually surprise you. It's number 8 right now.
Interesting. So he may be someone to target. Interesting. Okay. At number 4, I have Stefan Diggs. I think he's still overwhelmingly the number 1 option for the Bills. I think that pretty much sets him apart from some of the other guys. It's a better offense, better quarterback, still the number 1, still gets decent separation. I think if Adams was with Buffalo, I think I'd have Adams in the top 2 though. So I really like Diggs here. I think, like I said, the last 3 guys you could even order in any way you want to. Maybe even the top 6 or 7 guys you can order in various different ways. Jeff, what do you think of Diggs being at this spot, and who do you have at number 4?
I don't hate it. I think he's asked for the ball a lot, and that could either go really bad or really good, depending on if they're forcing him the ball and they get interceptions and he gets upset. And there's a lot of things that could happen here. I didn't like the way the offseason ended, kind of with Diggs and the Bills, with the OTAs. He's going to be at camp. We'll see how it goes, I guess. But McDermott was very concerned about Diggs, so to go from very concerned to everything's fine concerns me a lot, but that's possible.
So concerned they didn't even try to sign Hopkins? Okay, I don't think they're very concerned.
Right. But the fact that he released that to the media makes me question his leadership
Yeah.
methods and skills.
There's a good chance McDermott's fired by next
Right.
season.
I think he's on the hot seat. I really do. But my next wide receiver at number 4 is Tyreek Hill. And I just believe that Tyreek is going to continue to light the world on fire. And I have him at 115 grabs, 1,406 yards, and 11 touchdowns receiving. So he's my number 4 wide receiver. He said he wanted to get to 2,000 yards, and this is kind of why I bumped him up a few spots, is because if if he gets on that path of getting 2,000 yards, then this could be a wide receiver 1 season for him.
I have Mr. Cheetah at number 3.
Okay,
So I like Tyreek Hill. He finished in the top 3 last year. He had 1,700 yards last year. I don't know if he can
he was number 3.
I don't. Yeah, I don't know if he can get that much
Repeat.
this year. He can certainly try for 2,000 yards. I don't know if he can keep his nose clean for the entire season. He did settle his legal case. I don't know if the league is even going to bother touching this. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. I do think though that Waddle is going to get some of those targets though. You can put Tyreek at number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, any of these spots. So that makes sense. Jeff, who do you have at your number 3?
Number 3, I have the returning Cooper Kupp. I believe that he could be wide receiver 1. In fact, my projections came out with him being wide receiver 1. The reason why I bumped him down a few spots is because of the questions around Matthew Stafford's health and his arm health. So I just believe that that little factoid bumps him down a few spots.
Well, I also really like Cooper Kupp, despite Matthew Stafford's health, which I accounted for by giving him lower stats than what I wanted to, but I also have Cooper Kupp pretty high. I have him at my number 2 spot. I think that he is a receptions hog. I don't think that anyone on that team threatens his supremacy as the number 1 receiving option for the Rams. I think they're going to be in a lot of negative game scripts. So I think everything lines up to Cooper Kupp getting a monster target share and a lot of stats. So I really like him at number 2. I really am curious what his ADP is and if I even have a shot at getting him in a redraft league this year. But I I,
Oof.
I think he's going to be
You are
good.
you're asking a lot there because his current ADP is wide receiver 3 and he's overall the 6th player going off the board. So,
Everyone's back on board then immediately.
yep.
Well, well,
I
shoot.
mean, I mean, he was on pace to be the wide receiver 1 last year before he got hurt. So, it does matter. Fluke injuries do happen, but I have him at 131 catches for 1523 and 10 touchdowns.
See,
Am
I'm
I
lower and
close?
he's my number 2.
Okay. Okay. But I also have him with 54 yards rushing and a rushing touchdown as well.
Yeah. I took a more conservative approach with a lot of these wide receivers. So I don't have anyone as high as they got last year. So as far as the top guys, I don't have anyone getting 1,800 yards or 1,700 yards. I
Me
just
either.
don't. I can't buy that kind of production. But I still have him my number 2. Jeff, I can take a guess at who I think your number 2 is based off of who's left. Is it Jamar Chase?
It is Jamar Chase, but one last thing on Mr. Cup here. His best season was we're like 15. We're like a year and a half removed from his best season. He had 145 grabs for 1947 with 16 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So do you think he'll get close to that production?
I don't know if he will get 1,900 yards. I don't know if any receiver is going to get 2,000 yards. I think a lot of these top guys, any of them could do it. I think teams are going to double team Cooper Kupp because there's really not another receiving option to compete with him. So it makes the most sense for them to try to eliminate Cooper Kupp or make it harder for Stafford to get him the ball. I think despite that, he's still going to be the number 2 fantasy wide receiver this year. And I think that that's pretty fair. Jamar Chase, I think could do the same thing. He could potentially get close to 2,000 yards. I'm just evening out the target shares for the top four options for Burrow. And I think that Chase, however, is one of the most complete wide receivers out there. I think he's a better version of Devontae Adams. And Devontae Adams is already a top wide receiver. So I like both of these guys.
Absolutely. And can I make a guess who your top wide receiver is?
Go
Justin
for it.
Jefferson.
No, it's actually Justin Johnson. I don't know who this Jefferson guy is that you speak of,
Uh,
but yes, it is Mr. Justin Jefferson, Mr. J. Jeff himself. Even though he didn't say his quarterback was in the top five, I still think his quarterback's going to throw him the ball quite a lot. Last year he had 1,800 yards. This year, I don't know if he'll get to that same mark again, but he is overwhelmingly the number one wide receiver, probably has the highest target share of any wide receiver out there. I think with a full year of Hawkinson and with Addison being added to the ranks, I think he might get a little bit less than he did last year, but still be the number one fantasy wide receiver this year. Jeff, do you concur? Do you
I
think the same
do.
things? Do you?
We agree. He is the one, and he's also ADP one, and I got him at 1666 receiving yards. So 9 touchdowns, though. Most yards in the league, but not the most touchdowns in the league.
All right. Well, that does it for our top 24 wide receivers. If you have anything else that you want to add before we close it out, let me know.
I think we are good. I cannot wait to do the running backs next week.
Oh my gosh. And will it change dramatically
It could.
between now and then? We're still waiting on Josh Jacobs, so he could be low on the list or he could end up back high again, depending on if he signs.
Waiting
So
on Jonathan
that'll,
Taylor, too.
yep, Jonathan Taylor as well. Oh man. Yep. So just so you guys know, it's not locked in stone. It will probably move all the way up until recording. And then we've talked about it. We probably will do a risers and fallers after we complete our rankings just to update a few items that have changed since we recorded. So that's something else for you guys to look forward to. But that does it for this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you guys for downloading or listening to this episode. Please do not forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment to share the show. Every little bit helps. If you guys comment and like and view the episode, it really helps with the algorithms. It helps us get noticed by people looking for fantasy football content. So it really would mean the world to us if you guys would like and comment, interact, share. That really helps us.
And as always, you can find us with our handle at N2EFantasy on Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Threads, or X as we call Twitter now. Please give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And remember, it is truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Bye, everybody.